Hi, I'm Ralph Preston, and every Tuesday we have these Stroke Buddies Recovery and Science Zoom meetings where we try and bring stroke survivors valuable information that they can use in their recovery. And today we're going to do a little overview on neurologic music therapy, and we're honored to have three important guests today. And I'm going to introduce them in their order of appearance. I'm going to introduce Elizabeth Ryder, even though she's going to join us a little later. I'm going to introduce her now. So, Vanessa Morin is a Neurologic Music Therapy Fellow with MEDRhythms. She graduated from Berklee College of Music with a degree in music therapy after completing her internship at Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital with MEDRhythms. Vanessa is the inpatient clinician at Burke Rehabilitation in White Plains, New York. Next, we have Isabelle Liu. And Isabelle is a neurologic music therapist with MEDRhythms also. Isabelle also graduated from Berklee College of Music with a degree in music therapy, completed an internship at Spaulding, and is also one of the clinicians at Burke Rehabilitation Hospital. And last but not least is Elizabeth Ryder. Liz is an occupational therapist and the clinical team leader of the spinal cord injury program at Burke Rehabilitation Hospital. So I want to welcome you all and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your time with us today. And I guess at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to you, Vanessa.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. It's always wonderful to get to connect with people from everywhere, really, and talk about neurologic music therapy, talk about MEDRhythms, and talk about, stroke surviving and what we can do to better everyone's lives and things that I know, obviously, we believe in the work we do, but share a little piece of that with you all. So let me just share my screen and we'll get started. So we're kind of doing our introduction to this series, just to give you a little bit of an idea of who we are as MEDRhythms, what we do, and then a bit of a high-level overview on some science of the brain, which is like my favorite topic. So if I'm going too fast, please tell me to slow down. I just get excited. So MEDRhythms is a company based out of Portland, Maine, but we have two divisions. So we have our therapy division, which is based out of Boston, Massachusetts. And then we have our digital team, which is based out of Portland. You'll hear from both of them through this series. But obviously, Isabelle and I are on the therapy team. We are both neurologic music therapists. We're both clinicians here. And our team is just that. We're a team of highly trained clinicians that provide neurologic music therapy services through the continuum of care. So from inpatient rehabilitation all the way to in-home and telehealth care, we do it all, which is super exciting for us as a practice. And then we collaborate with a lot of these top rehab hospitals, particularly where we find ourselves on the East Coast. So that's Spaulding Rehabilitation, Burke Rehab, where Isabelle and I, in White Plains, New York, and then also JFK Johnson in Hackensack, New Jersey. So we're expanding and providing services to more and more people throughout this continuum. And then our digital team, they'll speak more on this, but they are a group of engineers and business professionals that are looking at how can we take some of these interventions that we do as clinicians and provide them to more people that might not have access to that care. So what they're doing is also super fascinating and super interesting. But I am not a tech savvy person, so I will leave them to explain all of that. But we're going to talk about the clinical team and what it means to be a clinician today and what we offer in terms of our services. So I mentioned the continuum of care. This is it kind of laid out. So we have inpatient, outpatient, home care, and then telehealth. Obviously, the majority of you tuning in are home. But it is important to think about that early intervention as well. And that's kind of where we specialize. So I am the clinician. I work full-time in the inpatient rehab hospital at Burke. Isabelle.
I am part-time inpatient and part-time outpatient.
And offering telehealth services in the near future, hopefully, to the New York area. So it's a lot of this work that we do. We see people inpatient because that's where hospitals are willing to fund us. But, one of the things our CEO, Brian, when he was a clinician, said is that people would say, well, what's next? And the answer wasn't great. The answer was nothing. And as a team and as a therapy team, it was really important for us to be able to say, now you can do this. So within the New England area, within New York, and now within New Jersey, we're able to say, now you can do this. Now we can go into your home and provide services. And even now we can meet you on Zoom where you are, anywhere in the world, to provide services. So this is a huge and exciting moment for us as a therapy team to say, we will meet you where you're at. And I think also really important for our survivors that they're also able to get these services no matter where they might be, whether that's, we have some clients in Mexico, we've had clients in Singapore, we've had clients that are on the other side of the country, or even here in, the New England area or New York. So being able to say, no matter what, we can meet you there, is really important to us as a company, is important to us as a team. So I've kind of talked a little bit about all of this, how great we are, but what are we actually doing? This is important. So why music? That tends to be the question a lot of people ask. Obviously, we all love music. 99% of the population perceive and enjoy music. So it can be a really, really helpful outlet when we're going through something like a life-altering event like a stroke, for a variety of reasons. But we also know that music and the brain interact in a way that nothing else does. So there are two main pieces of literature that really inform what we do as neurologic music therapists that I'll briefly discuss. The first one is this idea of widespread activation. So here's my fun fact for you all. Maybe you've heard it before, maybe you haven't, but music is the only thing we know of in the world, the only stimulus we know of that can activate both sides of the brain. So when we think about neuro rehab, we have a lot of sayings you might have heard before. We say, what fires together wires together, right? Use it or lose it, all this stuff. And when we think about rehab in general, we think about getting better in general. A lot of the times when we've had a diagnosis, or we've survived a stroke where we have had some sort of damage to the brain, it's really important to think, well, where can we get these neurons to fire elsewhere? And music is able to do that. Music is able to activate both sides of this brain, to help with our functional goals like walking, speaking, our memory, our cognition. So that's the first piece of literature, as we know music activates both sides. The second one is this idea of neuroplasticity, which is another word you've probably heard of before, but just as a refresher, neuroplasticity is the idea that the brain can change based off of what you do and your environment. So it's something that is happening no matter what. Your brain is changing because you decided to be you decided to play a sport, or you decided to be really good at the piano, or whatever it might be. Your brain is changing based off of decisions you've made in your life. What we do know for a fact is that musician brains are structurally and functionally different than non-musician brains. So we know that there are more neural connections in musicians. So they have more gray matter as well. So there's a structural difference in the brain of a musician. And what that leads us to believe is that participating and engaging in music making can induce neuroplastic change. That was a lot of fancy words to say that if you participate in some sort of music making, right, whether that's learning an instrument, singing a song, doing anything like this, your brain is going to change, which is awesome when we think about, right, what fires together wires together. This idea of inducing neuroplasticity for your goals, right? You hear your therapist say that stuff all the time. So if we can harness the power of music, harness this idea of our music's firing our brain in these different ways, and also changing it, to make things easier for you. Why wouldn't we use it as a tool in neuro rehab? Why wouldn't we use it as a way to make people more independent, to give them their lives back? So that's like a little taste of some of the science. And then the last thing, what actually is neurologic music therapy? Talking about all of this before we show this video, and then we kind of go more in depth in these upcoming sessions on what music therapy and neurologic music therapy really looks like. What is it? It's always important to reiterate.
So just to give a brief overview of what even neurologic music therapy is, it is a research and evidence-based practice where we hope to target functional goals such as what Vanessa has been saying, like your walking, speech and language, maybe upper extremity or lower extremity, muscle weakness and coordination, all of that good stuff within musical tasks and interventions. However, one of the biggest focus for us as NMTs is the carryover. We want to see how you do when we take the music away after intense frequency and practice. Obviously, as much as I would love to have my patients sing for the rest of their lives, it is not functional, and that's not what we hope for our patients. So that is one of the main focus, which is the non-musical functional carryover that we hope to see for our patients and their goals.
All right. So what does this all really look like? We're going to show this video that takes place in Burke Rehab. So this is an inpatient site. It talks a little bit more about what is neurologic music therapy, some of the patients that we've seen, hearing from their families, just to give you an idea of some of the impact that it's had here.
He had had a stroke, and we thought he was just about gone. His condition was that he couldn't move. We were afraid he was going to be that way for the rest of his time.
There was no life in him. You could just see the depression.
Luckily, they did some research and decided on Burke.
We're gonna try music therapy. He was like, huh? Music?
Neurologic music therapy is the use of music, specifically neurorehabilitation at Burke, but it's a set of standardized interventions based off of years and decades of neuroscience research and how the brain can be affected by music and help in neurorecovery.
So I've been a fan of neuromusic therapy for a long time, ever since working with Brian Harris, who at the time was an intern for neuromusic therapy at Spaulding. And we would work together, and I could see the difference that he was making. And he knew he was making an incredible difference in the lives of these patients.
I've always loved music. I loved the idea that music could be used to help people. And the very first music therapy session that I ever witnessed was with an 18-year-old boy that was functioning at about a 1-year-old level, physically and cognitively. So he was wheelchair bound, unable to walk, nonverbal. And within the first 10 minutes of live music being presented to this boy from this music therapist, he began to cognitively function at a higher level than what anybody had seen in his life. So his family was in the room, the people that worked with him every day came in the room, and they were literally in tears because they couldn't believe how this boy was functioning in response to the music. And it was that singular moment that changed my life, that I said that this is my calling in life and I need to be using music in this way. But then also, if we could really understand why that was possible, for this boy to respond that way to music, that's when we could really harness the power of music and replicate it to help a lot of people.
With somebody, I
NMT is neuromusic therapy. Any patient with any neurological diagnosis benefits, but here at Burke, the patients that receive it most are those with stroke and brain injury.
Music is one of the only stimulus that we know of that activates both the left and the right hemisphere. We really use that widespread activation to help recruit other parts of the brain to help with the brain function and just the rest of the body functions as well.
We know from functional MRIs and different scans that music truly lights up all of the different parts of the brain. So after a person has had a neurological injury or illness, and parts of the brain are compromised, we need to tap into whatever resources are there. But music just reaches these parts of the brain that we might not be able to tap into otherwise. So when you pair music with the traditional therapies, you're able to accomplish those non-music goals. It's just that music is the vehicle to get there.
We do it for gait, we do for upper extremity, speech and language, and also cognition-wise with a lot of memory, attention, executive functioning, all of that.
His condition before he came in was abysmal. He could not use his hand, he could not walk.
Gene was a great patient to work with. One of our nurse managers came up to me in the hall and said, "You have to see this guy. He's had a stroke and his walking is difficult. He doesn't have much speech at all." And I said, "This sounds like my kind of guy to work with."
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Towards the end, I will say, of his stay here, that's when I kind of was like, yeah, my dad's back. He's coming back, you know? And I mean, it wasn't only Vanessa, it was like every program that he was in, you could see a little something. But I believe that she started that with the music.
I guess I saw him over a year post. He recognized all of us, which is something that you don't see very often, and he was able to have conversations and talk about his time here, and it was very heartwarming, and it was great to see him moving around without a device, you know, talking, being with his family. I don't want to say it's magic because it's science, but sometimes it really does look like magic. Ooh, you're a little nervous. Take a breath out. Ooh, we're gonna do that again,
Yes.
okay?
I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
One of the big phrases I do for almost every patient, if they can't say it, is "I love you," because being able to say that is something that I think is really important.
I love you. I love you.
There it is. It's okay, we'll do it together.
I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I love you.
Last time?
I love you.
Perfect. Gorgeous.
Well, I think what makes MEDRhythms unique is not only just the type of care that we provide. We provide very specialized care in neurologic music therapy, but also the way in which we administer it. We have a team of clinicians and a team of non-clinicians as well who are really, really focused and committed to patient care and really committed to changing patients' lives in a positive way.
I am very grateful and lucky, and the amount of appreciation that I have for this company, how it has changed my life. No words can express that. They were the platform or the bridge that connected me with the patients that I am treating today.
In the 2 weeks since he has arrived, it has been nothing short of amazing how much farther he's come along, and I have hope, and I'm crying a lot less at night because I'm crying happier tears because I feel like there's really a lot of hope here that he can have a life of quality and we can continue to do the things that we want to do.
There's no other place like this place. It's really remarkable.
Neuromusic therapy, unfortunately, is not a standard of care yet, although it should be. So there's a lot of reasons why it's not in every hospital. One, it's really hard to find qualified neuromusic therapists who are both musically talented and neuro rehab professionals. Two, it costs money to start a program like this, and it is not something that is insurance reimbursed. So it requires the hospital to make that happen through donations and other sources of funding. So we're honestly very, very lucky here to be at a place where administration has been supportive of this, and then we've been able to get the support to keep it going.
I thought I was gonna lose my dad. My dad is my best friend. And it was very scary for me. But, the progression is good. Every day he does something new. He tries very hard to get back, and every day he says the same thing: I'm gonna get back, I'm gonna get back. And I'm like, yeah, you are, because you believe you are, you're gonna do it.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
97% of the human population, regardless of age, culture, ability, or disability, all respond the same to music objectively. And there's no other stimulus on earth that engages our brain like music does.
All right. I'm a video guy, and that was a good video.
Thank you. Yeah, so some of the work that we've done here at inpatient at Burke, and so I was like, our program is in its third year, and we're just very lucky to have people in administration and therapists really rally behind the program to see it expand and to make sure that people are able to receive this care. Which I just have to shout out to Burke for that. But I say now we can take any questions anyone has.
If anybody's got one, go ahead. I got two things to say. I probably should have had this in the intro, but for everybody here who might not know, and those of you out in YouTube land, this is the first of a series of 5 programs that we're doing. The other 4 will be the next 4 Tuesdays at the same time. And so if you're interested in this, join us for all of them that you can. And I just wanted to say that anybody who wants to hear a longer version of how neurologic music therapy works on the brain, I asked Brian Harris, CEO of MEDRhythms, this question in an interview I did with him. And I pulled a 3-minute clip that is absolutely the best explanation of how music works on the brain that you'll ever hear, that I've ever heard, and that you'll ever hear. And it's on my YouTube channel. I have a playlist for neurologic music therapy, and these 5 presentations are going to beef it up a good bit. But the full interview with Brian's there, and so is the 3-minute clip. So if you want to hear that, go to the YouTube channel. If you're on the YouTube channel, you can just look for it in the NMT playlist. So without further ado, I'll get quiet and let people ask questions. I noticed Liz joined us. Good.
I have a question. It was just something I'm wondering about. At first I was going music therapy. Well, I don't play an instrument or I don't sing. I wonder if I should go to the workshop. And so here I am. What kinds of therapy do you think we could do at home who don't have somebody as special as you have at the hospital? Is there certain things? Can I just listen to music that I love that will encourage me to do the exercises I should be doing, etc.?
That's a great question, Mindy. Thank you so much. So I applaud. Thank you so much for coming, despite not being a musician. I think a lot of people have that same line of thought. They go, "Well, I don't play anything," or like, what does my dad say? He goes like, "I got kicked out of choir," How am I supposed to sing? And a lot of people feel that way, but you don't need to have any type of music background to engage in music therapy or music in general, especially because, when we think about a lot of the science of music, it's something that we understand just from listening to it. We understand the rules of a lot of music without having to have any sort of background in it. And it's all something I'm sure we enjoy. If you've decided to come here, you probably enjoy music a fair bit. I will say there are some like blanket things you can do to engage in music, just like you said, Mindy, putting on some music while you're doing your exercises, so we know music can boost endurance. But if there are targeted goals that you're really looking for and hoping to work on, I would say reach out to us, even if it's just as a consult, to kind of pick the brains of our clinicians, because we aren't just in the hospital, we are in home and on telehealth. We can give you a better idea of what things might look like. It's hard to say one-to-one the things that you might be looking at and give you advice on it. But I will say definitely engage in music, listen to it, sing along to it, use it in smart ways to do the things that you are already set up to do, like your exercises, or if you find that that's something I tell people that I work with, I'm like, even if the only thing you do is like sing along to a song in the like first thing in the morning just to get your speech going, things like that are great ways to engage in music in a very non-committed way, and still kind of reap some of the benefits.
I was going to say, there are a couple members of our community that Kevin is not here, Kevin being one of them, who put on a playlist and sing for an hour a day to music. And most of them are somewhat over, but continuing to recover from aphasia or some type of language issues. And I believe in the other 4 presentations, we're going to touch on some of the things that you can do a little bit more specifically in terms of the different, well, we're going to talk about cognition and speech and 2 other things in more detail in the other 4. So
yes, definitely. If there's something that you are particularly interested in, tune in to the next sessions. I am going to answer this question in the chat, if that's all right. Joe asked, can you explain more about what the program is? Can I ask a clarifying question, Joe? Are you specifically asking about Burke, or are you asking about MEDRhythms and neurologic music therapy in general? And feel free to just put it in the chat as well. I can also talk about both.
Who else did you ask that?
Joe Gustafson.
Oh,
NMT
Joe.
in general. Okay.
Joanna.
Yeah, so I'm like, I can take this if you want to take this. Okay. So NMT in general, as Isabelle said, is a research and evidence-based practice with a series of interventions that target our functional goals. So that's like motor planning or motor movement, speech and language, and cognition. So a lot of it is really working and understanding what our other disciplines are doing. So what physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech and language are doing within their interventions, and then saying, how can we use music to help drive function and help use these mechanisms we talked about earlier, and have music help do some of the work and engage the brain more. So that might look like walking to a beat or walking to music. It might look like singing along to songs. It might look like, as you saw in the video, using melody to work on phrases that are a bit more functional, like your name, if you need the bathroom, things like this. But it's really like looking at what does typical rehab look like, and then how can we use music to help with those goals, help reach our goals, and engage the brain in the way that we know music can. Once again, I don't want to give away too much because there's 4 more sessions to talk about really in depth what this looks like. But I hope that answered your question.
I have another question. Does this music therapy, only affects people that cannot say words? And, how much of the brain does it affect after they get trained with this music?
That's a great question. So a lot of the video did show more like speech and language, but we do work on other areas. There have been a lot of studies in general that look more at like our functional outcomes, so like how fast are people walking, things like that. But there isn't necessarily anything that, like, there haven't been a lot of studies that say like here's an fMRI image of someone post-stroke and then or before their stroke or immediately post, and then here's an fMRI image after music therapy. So it's hard to say exactly where things change. I would love to do research like that though at one point in my life. But the big thing we look at is, overall is, are people able to do what they're looking to, like, are they improving in the areas that they're hoping to improve in? And maybe an inpatient, it can be a little dicey to say who exactly does what, because we're all just working so much. But I'm sure Liz can also talk about the opposite perspective as an OT.
Okay.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. Our daughter had a stroke nearly 5 years ago, a brainstem stroke. So she's paralyzed from the neck down. She can't eat or drink or speak, but she's 100% cognitive. She used to play violin for the Cheltenham Philharmonic Orchestra, played piano. She just bought a guitar because she wanted to learn to play the guitar when she had her stroke. Now she's had a couple of neurological music therapists over the years, virtually since she had her stroke. And excuse me, I've got a problem with my my voice box, so I might start to cough. So we never really sit in on these therapies because it's a personal thing between Becky and her therapist. Sometimes I'm a bit too chatty and Becky prefers to be left on her own. So we haven't seen much of what goes on, but we do get regular reports from the therapist who highlights that Becky has some tiny movements in 1 or 2 of her fingers, which seem to be only visible when she's actually having music. And we've heard 1 or 2 videos where Becky is sort of singing along with the music therapist because she plays lots of different instruments. So Becky is making sounds, which is something which we're desperate for her to be able to do, not necessarily talk, but she has an eye gaze tablet where she uses which she uses to do some communication, but she has a spelling board which she prefers to use to enable her to communicate. And one of the issues, apart from sometimes the staff can't use it, is the staff come into the room, or anybody, we're guilty of it sometimes, and they're not watching Becky all the time, and she might want to speak, and she flickers her eyes when when I want to speak, she flickers her eyes like this, and sometimes people aren't watching her. And I said to her, we would love her to be able to make a noise which would attract attention. So recently at the place Becky is, there's a new speech and language lady taken over, who's very sort of proactive. And I said, what about applying for funding for this to support Bex? And she said, well, NMT is traditionally with the NHS, it's traditionally difficult. They don't recognise it as a as an approved as an approved therapy. And she said, I think the best thing is, and I'm sort of almost quoting her here, is if Becky's enjoying it with Kat, who's the music therapist, that's the best thing. Becky's having her time with the music therapist, but I don't think it's anything that we can develop outside of the music therapy. Now, I propose, if it's possible, to send this first video to the neurological music therapist, to the SLT. And I wondered, is there anything else that you would be able to say, possibly even email me, because it would be better if it was in black and white, to give Jerry, her name is, to give Jerry some insight into the possible benefits, and that it's not just a case of great, Becky really likes music, and when she's with Kat she can make some noises, and okay, she moves her fingers a little bit, but that's all. And we're not going to be able to do anything more than that outside of their outside of their NMT.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. That was like a lot of information. I'm processing it a little bit still. I would, I don't know how much, if like, there's a lot of things that could, I don't know how much your therapists talk to each other. But even if it's coming from that neurologic music therapist to the speech therapist and like kind of putting them in contact of, to collaborate more could be an option. So a lot of the times, it's just like a lack of education on people's parts. One of the things we did here at Burke was really do a bunch of education for our therapists because they had no idea what we did when we stepped foot into the hospital. So it could just be that what the speech therapist is imagining might not be what's actually happening, or it's hard for us, especially when we're not in like the same place. Like here, we're really able to collaborate, but allowing your therapist to collaborate more in that way might be help with like that barrier, or even try and set up a co-treatment between the two of them to see what might be working, because speech therapists, they have a different lens that they might be seeing something through. So for us as music therapists, it might be like, oh well, this is a song she really likes and she's making the sound, but for a speech therapist it could be something completely different that they would be able to replicate in their session. So I would say if you could put them in contact, you're also welcome to send them to us. I don't know how much we'll be able to do as like a third party, but we can definitely, I would say, share the video or share some of the other talks that Ralph has on his channel, or you can even send them to or this next one that we have, I think, is on speech and language. So any of these things to just give more education to these therapists, because a lot of times it's just people don't know what they don't know. And it's not any fault on them. It's just that this is a new field, and people don't know, and that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the same in America, but in the UK, everything revolves around funding, and for the SLT to be able to spend time with Bex, our daughter, in theory, she needs to receive funding from the NHS. So she needs to apply for the funding, and to apply for it, she's got to sort of justify it's something that she believes and can demonstrate may be able to help Becky. So whilst she pops in to see Becky sometimes, she has explained to Becky it's more on a social basis rather than a therapy basis. So we just need to give her as much information as possible to try and sort of convince her, if you like, that NMT it could be a benefit, and try to convince her that it's worth applying for funding, so that either she, as a speech and language, or Becky's own music therapist, she could maybe instead of, because she only comes once a week for an hour, so but Becky's paying for that therapy privately. So it would be good if we could try to get the speech and language lady on board to either get additional funding for the music, the NMT to come along more often, or for speech and language to get on board and maybe do some of their own, some of their own development along those lines. So okay, yeah, well, I presume it'll be. And I appreciate you. You haven't seen Becky. You don't know what she's like. But I presume there'll be something on the site. Ralph's pretty good at directing people in the right direction. So maybe I could set down Becky's situation, and maybe if you were to respond in an honest way, just to try and convince the SLT lady that it's worth their considering, and applying for funding and the benefits of it. Yeah.
Seems like that'd be the first step to me. Get the SLP focused on what you want them focused on. And John, you know how to reach out to me. I wish I had a magic bullet to give you for the last 3 or 4 years that I've been trying to help you.
No, I know you always do your best, and I'm sure there's some people are always they probably, well, I'm sure there's lots of people have benefited. But I would like to show this video to Bex. I'm sure, however long, 45 minutes, an hour, I'm sure it would be time well spent by her. And I've already picked up that maybe because she's got access to all sorts of things on her TV, so she can go on Amazon Music and things. The suggestion that maybe she can just play some of her favorite songs every day, and for 30 minutes or an hour, see if she can sing along with those, which is a therapy she can do herself. I'll be certainly putting that to her, But,
John. Hi, 2 seconds. Hi, John.
Yeah.
Last week or the week before, Ralph had a guest on called Beth Katz. She demonstrated some very easy exercises that you could do with your daughter. So what she does is she sings Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and then leaves out the keywords. So I've made a note to send you that video and the others, and you can go through them with her, and you might find some stuff you could help with.
I also received a little text message that we at MEDRhythms do have like some paperwork that we provide for to help with that we can submit for funding. So I am putting our clinical operations manager's email in the Zoom chat so you can kind of shoot us an email and we can do what we can and support in whatever way we can.
Great, fantastic. Yeah, because we'll never give up. I mean, the SLT lady said, because Becky was she's nil by mouth, but over the last 2.5 years, we've been giving her liquidized foods. We actually got her up to 75% of her nutrition was through liquidized foods, and she was having only two sort of 200 ml bottles of peg feed per day. Then about 2 months ago, she caught the flu. She was into respiratory unit, and she developed chest infection and then pneumonia. And we were told by 3 different doctors, specialists, that they really didn't think she was going to pull through. Well, she did pull through, but it's been made clear by the staff where she's at that giving Becky giving her food orally has probably led to some small chest infections, which, while she was strong, weren't a problem for her. But when she got the flu, I think they said that her body probably took over to fight the flu, and that's when the chest infections took over, increased. So unfortunately, she's not able to. They're going to do an assessment in about a month's time to see how her chest is, but at the moment she's not able to eat, which is rather a shame, because she was a great cook. and she loves food. So they've said we think maybe she can eat for pleasure. But yeah, that's great. I'll certainly be chasing up all of the leads, and if you've got anything I can share with the SLT to enlighten her, that would be great.
Yes,
Well,
great. Just send us everything and we can do our best to support.
yeah,
Moving-
Ralph, can I just chime in very briefly? Because we have Liz here.
Sure.
And Liz, I think you could offer a unique perspective when you think about educating and convincing others around you. I mean, you are a huge champion. You understood this before anybody else understood this, even though you're not the neurologic music therapist. So I was just wondering whether you had some other, tips or insights that will be really useful for this community to hear.
Hi, thank you, Barbara, and thank you to everybody here in the group.
Oh,
So my name is Liz, and I am an occupational therapist here at Burke. And as Barbara said, I'm not a neuromusic therapist, and yet at the same time, I'm a strong believer in it. And part of that is simply from seeing it with my own eyes and being there and seeing it in action. And I really believe that showing videos of it working is really the fastest way to get somebody on board, and then backing that up with some of the research articles that exist, because this is an evidence-based science. So for us here at Burke, I really wanted this to come here first. It took us several years to get this up and running. And so it's not something that necessarily happens overnight, even though you might believe very strongly that, this is what I need and this is absolutely it. It can take time. So I really liked Vanessa's thing about getting that speech pathologist on board, because I think that it really starts in this one-to-one education with the interdisciplinary team and getting a few people to really understand that watch the videos, you can see it happen in real time, read the research and understand that there's science behind this, and the science is very strong. And then you put those together, and when you have a few people, a few therapists that really believe in this, who are viewing this through a more traditional medical model, speech and PT, occupational therapy, that's how you build the support. And so for us, we had to do that. Funding here in the US is just as much of an issue as it is, with the NIH, and insofar as it is not covered by most insurance companies here in the US. It is not part of compliance in the inpatient setting. So, it's unfortunate that it is not yet a standard of care, but yet the more we can just keep advocating for it, and the more we can keep, contributing to the bodies of research through the programs that do exist, I do believe it's eventually going to get there, and it will eventually be a standard of care. But in the meantime, we are reliant on, private donors, et cetera, for our funding. But I think that incorporating it into other therapies, I love the tips about getting speech to carry over some of the goals. All of that is a way to get access now. But biggest things, show the videos and back it up with research.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a quick question. Earlier on the chart, you had the widespread activation of the brain. Is it understood as far as how much of that is related to the brain just simply processing the sounds, versus sometimes you hear that listening to older music will stir up memories, which also helps, like where it's a memory thing versus a processing thing? The reason I ask is I'm 4 years, 3 months after a massive right intercerebral hemorrhage. Can't feel anything on my left side, left peripheral vision's gone. And 5 weeks away from my stroke, I was transitioning out of inpatient to home health. And on my own, I decided to put some earbuds in and listen to Yo-Yo Ma cello. Never listened to that stuff in my entire life. I'm a product of the 80s. I'm a metalhead. And I noticed in those first few minutes of just listening to basic cello music, relaxing, my entire left side, which I couldn't feel, was involuntarily just twitching and not convulsing, but just twitching. And I was like, wow, that's really strange. And I kind of kept doing it over and over, because I noticed after the fact a more calming, relaxing feel. And I really attributed to early on being a calming force and helping me maybe accelerate my gains in the function and motor skills. So I'm just curious, how much is it understood as far as the activation? Does it relate to triggering old memories of songs we've heard before versus actually processing the sounds in a different and unique way through a, for lack of a better term, a damaged brain now?
So it's a bit of, depending on, what your goal area is, there's going to be differences. So we do know that like familiar music or like emotionally salient music is going to trigger those memories. So there's an area of the brain called the amygdala, which holds our long-term
Yes.
memories, and it's also very in ties with like intense emotions. So we know that music can activate that area of our brain. That being said, there's also, right, and I get what you're saying, like, is it just processing? We have our temporal lobes on both sides of our brain.
Mhm.
It could just be that we're hearing sound, right, through both sides. It's not quite that. So what we do know, we know a lot about melody and harmony and how that affects our brain. So that tends to be processed in actually like more of our language centers on the left side. Harmonic expectancy violations is one of those pieces that is processed in our like frontal lobe and our language areas. So that's like when someone does like da 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 da, and just like leaves it, like it feels like that restless feeling. That's like processed in our brain a little bit differently. And then the big one that we'll touch on in a later session is rhythm. We know that rhythm is all over our motor motor cortex and our motor centers. So that could be why, like, you're like, I've never even listened to Yo-Yo Ma. Why are my muscles activating? And a big part of that is actually beat salience, or a strong rhythmic pulse is going to activate our motor cortex. It's going to activate our cerebellum, which is all motor control. It's going to activate our basal ganglia, which is also part of motor control. And like, and then the last one is like our spinal cord loops, or central pattern generators, which is a lot of that, like you see something flying by you really quickly and then you like stop and move out of the way. Like you don't think about that movement. So we know beat can activate all these areas that are involved in our motor planning. And we also know that our neurons love rhythm. It helps activate our neurons to our muscles better. There's all this like synchronicity, there it is, that music can offer to our body. Which is just like very, very interesting. So it's not just that you're hearing something, right? It's you're hearing these different components of music, like harmony, like melody, like rhythm, dynamics, all of this stuff that our brain is processing in all of these different areas. And that's why we say widespread, because it's not that it's just like our brain's like, both hemispheres going. It's like here, light, light. So it's kind of happening all. It's not happening all at once all the time. It's happening kind of gradually in various areas. So it's all these components working together that activate our brain. And considering your injury and having this right side, kind of what the hope and of what we do here as neurologic music therapists is say, well, we know that we can activate the healthy side. We can activate this left side while we're doing things like moving, right? Like you were saying, like, and I would just put it on and I would try and move. And I think that helped a lot. So we're really telling the brain like, hey, I'm moving this, and the brain is rewiring and creating new pathways for your brain to that side of your body, which is just very cool that our brain can do it.
I firmly believe that, because during this time, I also held an ice cube in my left hand, which I still to this day cannot feel cold. And while I was listening to the music while holding the ice cube, I had somewhat of a sensation. It wasn't natural and normal like my right hand, but I did feel something that was, I guess, the new normal of what cold feels like. But that was only occurring as I'm listening to the music, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, and then when we talk about like our big goal is carryover, is we're hoping that we can replicate these feelings or the sensation of this movement enough within this music context that eventually you don't need it because your brain has rewired and you have gained this ability back. Sorry, I just got really excited about that.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. It sounds like something, just from my experience, that's better suited for, I don't want to say early intervention, but probably the first few weeks and months, maybe the first 2 or 3 months after the fact, because now, so many months and years out, I listen to music just to calm me and just relax me. I don't really notice anything different. I no longer have that involuntary twitching, listening to Yo-Yo Ma. It's just more of a calming relaxation.
Well, I would say yes and no. So actually, a lot of the research behind neurologic music therapy is done in chronic stroke. One, because when you're an inpatient, kind of like I was saying, it's hard to say what's actually doing it, because you do 3 hours of therapy or 4 hours of therapy if you have us a day, and it's hard to say, is it time, is it what one person's doing, is it what we're doing, is it like what's the factor. So a lot of the research is actually done in our chronic stroke population, because you guys don't have the same level of care. Like it's hard to get therapy to consistently come, or to you get insurance to pay for it and all this stuff. So a lot of the research is actually in that, so we can really see like what is the music doing, and how is it affecting the brain and affecting our chronic stroke survivors. So yes and no. I firmly believe there's no real such thing as a plateau. I think that you can continue to make gains. It just might look a little different than when you first got out of the hospital. That is our time. Sorry.
Oh, sorry about talking.
Yeah, we're
I'm a yapper.
I was gonna say, Danny, you might give it another go. Neuroplasticity lasts a lifetime. I would totally agree with you though about the starting early, because anytime you start anything early, I'm a videographer, so I jumped all over my hand. And the longer you wait, you're kind of like while neuroplasticity lasts a lifetime, and I know the therapists all know this, you do have more closer to the insult or the damage to your brain. It's so that's why it's so difficult to watch people not accepting what's happening to them and not doing anything, because in a sense they're burning some of that extra neuroplasticity, not using it. And
the opportunity,
and that's why I think it's important that eventually that music therapy become accepted and funded and paid for by the insurance companies. I don't want to get into too much, but insurance companies and hospital systems control what happens to us. We get the
What is this company doing to get the awareness out? Because honestly, I have never heard of this. I mean, I've been in a lot of OT down here in 2 different hospitals, and this is never, I never even knew it existed. I just kind of experimented on my own because I'm a naturally curious scientific creature, despite my career as a CPA.
Yeah, so a lot of what we do here, we do similarly, we come on to a lot of like survivor groups, do a lot of outreach within the community, within like where we are, as well as in other places. We're currently, as I mentioned before, like we are currently working on documentation to help with funding of our individual sessions. There's a lot that we're trying to accomplish as honestly a small practice, to bring awareness to what we do here, and get the word out and to try and make it as accessible as possible. One of the things that I'm like really proud of that I helped develop is we do like a pro bono program where we actually we use our students as a way to like give them practice, but then also give people that might not have funding otherwise to pay out of pocket for like individual sessions, to be able to experience it for a designated amount of time. So there's a lot that we try to do to bring this to the masses, and what the bandwidth we're capable of, I guess, is the caveat to that. But things like this are a great way to bring it to the
If
people.
you want to partner or any help with that, you just let me know. Dana, you know, I'm doing all I can with it. You may not be aware of the fact we actually have a neurologic music therapy group. It's got about 100 people in it now, post articles and
Oh, wow.
things like that. So it's called Neurologic Music Therapy, a Stroke Buddies group. And I can send you a link. I'll write it down to do
Yeah,
that.
that'd be great because I'm always exploring with the music. I mean, I've been using binaural beats for a variety of reasons, and I just think it's an incredibly powerful resource and tool. Whether it's actively playing, which I'd never played an instrument other than the trumpet in middle school, or more passively listening. Although, you know, I got a trumpet downstairs. Maybe I should try that.
Well, Neil Isaac used to be a trumpet player, and he's used it not only for cognitive stuff, I mean, in terms of, you know, connecting with the music, but he also has used it and greatly helped his dexterity with his right hand because he's got to push the valves with it.
Yeah.
I was lucky to bump into MEDRhythms, and this got on my radar, for lack of a better term. Yeah, just like aphasia, I think the aphasia community is underserved. So I've been doing a number of things to try and push aphasia, and you know, one of my and neurologic music therapy is another one that I'm basically trying to promote it, educate people about it, which is why we're putting on these meetings. I'm not trying to take any credit for it, but I called on them, I called for them, and Barbara and MEDRhythms were. Well, I asked for 2 and I got 5, so they more than did their share. It was funny because I found out about, you know, cognition or something. I said, well, you could cover that under speech, or maybe we could do a third one. And then I got a schedule saying that there were 5, so I was excited about that, and I'm grateful to partner with them and for their generosity in making this happen. And if there's some way we can take it further and work together to, I mean, you know, we put on yoga and breathing classes. I wanted to have a speech class for a long time. I haven't found an SLP. I found several, but I haven't found one to do that. It'd be great to have some kind of a monthly neurologic music group that, and then record it and put it on YouTube. One of the things that really has to happen in this, and I won't get too far into this, but one of the things that I think that really has to happen is a lot of these modalities need to be somehow brought to where the person can do it at home after they've run out of insurance, or if their insurance in the case of NMT doesn't pay for it. So accessibility to the information and maybe some group or practice, or like Gary mentioned, Beth Katz had some things you could do at home. She, by the way, they're nodding their head because I'm sure they know Beth Katz because she came out of MEDRhythms and Spalding and the whole thing. You guys are really it's great what you're doing between MEDRhythms, Spalding, Harvard, Berkeley. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna keep promoting the things that I think more people need to know about, or to the communities that are underserved, like the aphasia community. So, anybody else got anything?
That's it. Thank you for putting this on. It's very informative and helpful for me. I appreciate it.
We'll come back for the other 4. And anybody who can't come back for the other 4 in this group live right now or out there in YouTube land, all of them will be recorded and they'll be on my YouTube channel, which is called Stroke Buddies, oddly enough. And you go to playlists and you look down, it's about the 4th or 5th one down. There'll be one on neurologic music therapy. And so we'll just keep putting information in there. And as I mentioned earlier, you could join the group if you're on Facebook.
Thank you so much for having us.
So thank you so much for doing it. My goodness, all I had to do was have you.
Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. are. Do all you can. Do all you